Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm John Dickerson. We continue with our political panel. Dan Balz is chief correspondent at The Washington Post. Reihan Salam is executive editor of the National Review. Molly Ball covers politics for The Atlantic. And Ron Fournier is the senior political correspondent for National Journal. Ron, I cut you off with a hard stop, but tell me what you were going to say.
Was it because I was going to challenge the premise of your question?
Yes, but never do that. So you got to come up with
Hillary Clinton's negative ratings are a factor in the race. They're going to make it harder for her to win the nomination if she does. They're going to make it harder for her to win the presidency if she does, and they're going to make it impossible for her to be a transformational leader if she wins. She has to fix these ratings. Now let's talk about Trump. My point on Trump kind of linked to her. He needs to go against type. Imagine if Hillary Clinton had run an incredibly authentic, very nimble, very transparent campaign. She'd be in a far different position now because it would blow people's minds. It would be against the typecast they had of her coming into this race. Instead, she's played a type. What if Donald Trump at the campaign kind of acts like he did on that phone call? If he's serious, if he's substantial, if he's not being bombastic. That would, and he doesn't even have to be that serious. It would blow people's minds, and that's what he has to do, is play against type.
Yeah.
One thing that I found very striking about the interview you conducted is that, when Donald Trump was asked about his taxes, he simply said, I try to pay as little as possible. And the thing is that, for most voters, I think their instinct is that, well, of course that's true, and that's probably true of everyone else too, and yet they must preemptively apologize. So here is Donald Trump not preemptively apologizing in that way. And I think if you're looking at Democrats too, in the 90s there's a sense among the liberal grassroots that you had Democrats who were apologizing for being Democrats constantly. And then, after the Iraq War, there's this belief that we need a new kind of Democrat. Among Republicans, too, now there's a sense they're out of step with the country, and so they're in a defensive crouch. They have to apologize for who they are. They have to somehow, seem more appealing, and I think that makes them seem inauthentic, and that's what Trump is capitalizing on.
I was struck in that interview when he said, I'm now a politician. I mean, it was as though he has made a transition from being Donald Trump, the business guy, with all the bombast, to being somebody who now thinks of himself in the political environment. And I wonder how much that will change him as he goes forward.
Do you think his rivals are cutting that ad already?
Well,
and like
perhaps.
a true politician, he totally ducked the last question about mistakes he'd made. Molly, I want to ask you about Hillary Clinton. On Friday, she released a whole bunch of information about her tax returns. There was a letter about her health. What was that about?
Well, I think, as Ron said, this perception of her not being transparent, which I think is not just a media narrative, it's a fact that the Clintons, especially Hillary, are very guarded, very secretive people. And this has erupted into multiple controversies, including the email scandal. And so they realize that's hurting them, and they're trying to present a sort of charade of transparency, I think, by releasing some of this stuff and trying to seem upfront about it, trying to seem as if she is actually being more forthcoming with some of the information that I think would have to come out eventually. So her taxes, for example, as you mentioned before, showing that she paid about a 35% tax rate on a whole lot of income, $28 million in the last year. So this is a perception that I think she's finally starting to try to attack.